The water pressed against David Reed's diving suit with the weight of 1,000 worlds. 12,000 meters below the surface of Tethys 9, the darkness was absolute. Only the pale blue glow from his helmet lights cut through the black water, revealing strange fish that had never seen sunlight and rock formations that twisted in ways that hurt to look at. His radio crackled with static. Down this deep, even the advanced alien communication systems barely worked. David checked his oxygen gauge. 20 minutes left. 20 minutes to find the crashed supply vessel, attach the recovery cables, and get back to the surface before his air ran out and the pressure turned him into paste. He had been doing this job for 3 years now. 3 years of diving into alien oceans, recovering equipment for the reptilian overseers who ran the mining colony. 3 years since Earth had made contact with the wider galaxy and learned the hard truth. Humanity was late to the party, and all the good seats were taken. Now humans worked for other species, doing the dangerous jobs that even robots couldn't handle. David's scanner beeped. The crashed vessel should be just ahead, resting on the edge of a deep trench. He kicked his fins, propelling himself forward through the crushing darkness. The settlement on the surface felt like another world. Up there, under the floating platforms, humans lived in small quarters and followed alien rules. Down here, David was alone. He preferred it that way. The wreckage appeared in his lights. The supply vessel had split open like a dropped egg, scattering cargo across the rocky seafloor. David began attaching the magnetic cables, working methodically. His hands moved with practiced efficiency despite the thick gloves. Each movement had to be precise. One mistake at this depth meant death. Then his equipment started acting strange. The scanner showed an energy reading coming from deeper in the trench. That made no sense. Nothing should be down there. The trench was marked as unexplored on all the colony maps. Too deep, too dangerous. But the energy signature was strong, stronger than anything David had seen before. He should ignore it. He should finish his job and return to the surface. That was the smart thing to do. That was what a good worker would do. But David had stopped being a good worker the day his entire crew died in a tunnel collapse, while the alien supervisors watched and did nothing. He had questions since then. Questions about why humans were always given the worst jobs. Questions about why Earth scientists were never allowed to study the advanced technology. Questions that nobody wanted to answer. David made his decision. He detached from the wreckage and swam toward the trench edge. His oxygen gauge showed 15 minutes. Enough time for a quick look. Just a quick look. The trench walls fell away beneath him as he descended deeper. 14,000 meters, 15,000. His suit began to groan under the pressure. Warning lights flashed in his helmet, but David ignored them. The energy reading was getting stronger. Then he saw them. Structures. Massive metal pillars rising from the trench floor, covered in symbols that seemed to glow faintly in his lights. They formed a circle, and in the center of that circle was something impossible. A dragon. David had seen pictures of dragons in old Earth books, medieval tales and fantasy stories, but this was real. She was enormous, easily 50 meters long, with scales that shimmered like oil on water. Her body was serpentine, powerful, with 4 legs ending in clawed feet and wings that looked like they could blot out the sun, but she wasn't moving. Chains. Massive chains wrapped around her body, pinning her to the seafloor. The chains were made of something that looked like crystal and metal fused together, pulsing with a sickly yellow light. David counted 6 chains, each as thick as his body. He should leave. He should swim away and forget what he had seen. Every survival instinct screamed at him to go. But then the dragon's eye opened. It was golden, bright as a star, and it looked directly at him. David felt something push into his mind, gentle but insistent. Not words exactly, but feelings. Images, meanings that translated themselves into understanding. Please. The thought was weak, desperate. 3,000 years, please. David's oxygen gauge showed 10 minutes. He looked at the dragon, at the chains, at his plasma torch. The torch was designed to cut through metal for salvage work. It might work on the chains. It might not. He might die down here trying. He thought about his crew, crushed under tons of rock while alien overseers did nothing. He thought about every human on Tethys 9, working like slaves, never questioning, never fighting back. He thought about what it meant to be human, really human, in a galaxy that saw Earth as nothing special. David swam to the nearest chain and fired up his plasma torch. The blue flame touched the strange metal crystal, and immediately the chain began to react. Light poured from it, spreading along its length. The dragon's eye widened. Hope. After 3,000 years in the dark, something like hope. The chain shattered. The pieces dissolved into particles of light that drifted away like stars. The sound that followed was beyond hearing. It bypassed David's ears entirely and resonated in his bones, his teeth, his skull. A scream of joy and rage and awakening that he knew somehow was being heard across vast distances. The dragon's other eye opened. Both golden eyes fixed on him now, blazing with intensity. Through their connection, David felt her strength beginning to return. He felt her recognition of what he had done and what it meant. He also felt something else. Alarm systems activating, sensors triggering, attention turning toward this forgotten trench from very far away. Whatever had imprisoned her, whoever had locked her in the dark, now knew that someone had found her. David's oxygen gauge flashed red. 5 minutes. He looked at the 5 remaining chains, then at the dragon. Her voice filled his mind again, stronger now. More. Please. Free me and I will save you. I promise. Free me and everything changes. David Reed, human diver, former crew leader, pressed his plasma torch against the second chain. The galaxy was about to learn what one human could do when faced with impossible choices. The galaxy was about to learn that humanity, despite being weak and new and small, had one quality that no amount of pressure could crush. Humans did not leave people in chains. The second chain broke with the same impossible sound. David felt it vibrate through the water, through the stone beneath, through reality itself. The dragon shuddered as another binding fell away. Her golden eyes burned brighter, and the mental connection between them grew stronger, clearer. 3 minutes of oxygen left. David kicked toward the third chain, his movements urgent now. The plasma torch felt hot in his grip, even through the insulated gloves. Sweat dripped down his face inside the helmet. At this depth, if anything went wrong with his suit, he would be dead before he could think about it. The third chain took longer. Something in its structure resisted the torch more stubbornly. David adjusted the flame intensity, pushing the tool to its maximum output. His training had taught him to never exceed recommended settings, but his training had also taught him to follow alien orders without question. He was done with that kind of training. While he worked, images flooded into his mind, not his memories, hers. The dragon's past rushed through him like a storm. He saw worlds without names, civilizations built on principles humans had never imagined. He saw her species, dozens of them flying between stars without ships, their bodies somehow capable of traversing the void. He saw them teaching other races, sharing knowledge freely, lifting up younger civilizations. Then he saw the betrayal. Another species, cold and calculating, who called themselves the archivists. They smiled and learned and took every secret the dragons offered. But they did not share in return. They hoarded. They controlled. And when the dragons realized what was happening, it was too late. The archivists had turned the younger races against their teachers, spreading fear and lies. The dragons were too powerful, the archivists whispered. Too dangerous. They would dominate everyone with their knowledge. Better to let the archivists manage things. Better to have order. Better to have control. War came. Not a war of weapons, but of politics and manipulation. One by one, the dragon civilization fell apart. Some fled to unknown regions. Some were killed. Some were captured. This one, Aurelia, had been the last to resist. She had refused to surrender the deepest secrets of her kind. So they had chained her here, in the darkest depth of a forgotten world, to suffer until time itself ended. The third chain shattered. David's oxygen gauge showed 90 seconds. Keep going. Aurelia's voice in his mind was stronger now, almost commanding. I can feel you dying. Keep going. I will not let you die. I promise. David believed her. He had no logical reason to believe her, but the conviction in her mental voice was absolute. He swam to the fourth chain and began cutting. His vision was starting to blur at the edges. Not enough oxygen. His body was consuming air faster than normal because of the stress and exertion. 60 seconds. The fourth chain broke. Aurelia's body jerked as more of her power returned. David felt it through their connection. A surge of strength that was almost frightening. This being had been imprisoned for 3,000 years, and she was still stronger than anything he could comprehend. 30 seconds. The fifth chain was different from the others. It glowed darker, pulsing with an ugly light that made David's head hurt to look at. This chain was special. This chain was the key to something important. He could feel it through their bond. Yes, Aurelia confirmed. That chain binds my knowledge. The archivist feared what I knew most of all. Cut it, human. Cut it, and I will show your species the truth they have hidden from you. David pressed the torch against the chain. It resisted violently, sparking and hissing. The water around it began to boil despite the crushing pressure and freezing temperature. Warning symbols flashed inside David's helmet. His suit was failing. The plasma torch was overheating. His oxygen was gone, 10 seconds of reserve air. The chain cracked. Light poured from the fracture, light that was every color and no color at the same time. David's vision went white. His lungs screamed for air that wasn't there. His body began the process of shutting down. 5 seconds. The chain exploded. The force of it threw David backward, tumbling through the water. His torch fell from numb fingers and disappeared into the darkness below. He couldn't breathe, couldn't think, could only feel his body dying. Then everything changed. Water vanished from around him. Not the water itself, but its ability to harm him. David gasped and found himself breathing. Actually breathing. Air that tasted of lightning and starlight filled his lungs. Impossible, but happening. He was 12,000 meters deep in an alien ocean, and he was breathing. Aurelia rose before him. One chain remained, but she had enough power now to help him. David could see energy surrounding him, a bubble of altered reality that provided air and protection. The dragon's eyes blazed like twin suns. "The last chain," she said, and now he could hear her voice clearly, not just in his mind but in the water itself. "Cut the last chain and I am free." "Are you ready for what comes next, David Reed? Are you ready for the galaxy to see what you have done?" David retrieved his fallen torch. His hands no longer shook. Strange calmness filled him. He had been living in fear for 3 years. Fear of the alien overseers, fear of breaking rules, fear of standing out. That fear was gone now, burned away by the reality of what he faced. He was either going to free this ancient being or die trying. Either way, he would not spend another day bowing to species who thought humans were inferior. "Do it," he said aloud, his voice strong in the impossible air. The last chain was the largest. It wrapped around Aurelia's chest 3 times, directly over where her heart would be. The metal crystal pulsed with the rhythm of a heartbeat, slow and deep. This chain was not just a binding. It was a prison for her very life force. David cut. The torch bit deep into the chain, and this time there was no resistance. Instead, the chain seemed to welcome its destruction, as if it too was tired of its eternal duty. The cut spread along its length like a crack in ice, running around Aurelia's body, splitting and branching and multiplying. The chain fell away in pieces. Aurelia threw back her head and roared. The sound was physical, a wave of pressure that rushed outward in all directions. David felt it pass through him, felt it race upward toward the surface, felt it continue beyond the atmosphere and out into space. It was a declaration, a challenge, an announcement to everyone who had forgotten her name. Aurelia the dragon was free. She moved for the first time in 3 millennia. Her body uncoiled, stretching, testing. Scales that had been dull and lifeless began to shine. Her wings spread wide, each one larger than the mining colony's main platform. Power radiated from her like heat from a star. She turned to David. Despite her size, despite her obvious strength, her eyes held gratitude. "You are the first in 3,000 years to show me kindness," she said. "Your species is young. The archivists have kept you small, kept you weak, kept you ignorant of what you could become. This is the truth, David Reed. This is what they hide. Humans are not inferior. You are dangerous. Dangerous because you do not accept limits. Dangerous because when you see chains, you break them." David felt his air bubble beginning to fade. Aurelia noticed immediately. She moved with impossible speed, her body coiling around him protectively. Then they were moving, rising through the water at tremendous velocity. The pressure should have killed him. The speed should have torn him apart. But Aurelia's power protected him completely. They burst from the trench and continued rising, through zones of strange fish and stranger plants, through layers of water that changed temperature and composition, up toward the distant surface where the mining colony waited, unaware that everything was about to change. "Where are we going?" David asked. "To the old places," Aurelia answered. "To ruins your overseers forbid you from exploring. To knowledge they pray you never find. Hold on, brave human. Your reward for freeing me is truth. And truth, as you are about to learn, is the most dangerous weapon in the galaxy. Aurelia brought David to a structure he had never known existed. It rose from the ocean floor like a sleeping giant, covered in so much coral and plant growth that it looked natural. But as they approached, David saw the geometric patterns beneath the living camouflage. This was no natural formation. This was a building, ancient and massive. The dragon deposited him gently on a platform inside the structure. Water drained away through channels in the floor, and suddenly, David was in a dry chamber lit by panels that glowed with soft blue light. His diving suit was intact but no longer necessary. The air here was breathable, fresh, better than the recycled atmosphere on the colony platforms. "What is this place?" David asked, removing his helmet with shaking hands. "A library," Aurelia said. She had shrunk somehow, compressing her massive form into something closer to the size of a large vehicle. Even diminished, she radiated power. "One of thousands my people left scattered across the galaxy. Your overseers know about them. They keep your kind away from them very carefully." David looked around the chamber. The walls were covered in screens and interfaces, all dark now but beginning to glow as Aurelia's presence awakened them. Symbols scrolled across the displays, none of them in any language David recognized. "I don't understand," he said. "Why hide libraries from us?" "Because knowledge is power," Aurelia answered. She touched a screen with one claw and it brightened, showing images of spacecraft, weapons, medical technology, things far beyond what David had seen in his 3 years on Tethys 9. The archivists built their empire on a simple principle. Keep the young races stupid. Give them just enough technology to be useful, but never enough to be dangerous. Earth made contact with the galaxy 60 years ago. In that time, have your scientists been allowed to study alien technology? Have your engineers been permitted to build their own ships? David knew the answer. Every human knew it, though most tried not to think about it. Humanity had been given a few basic tools and then told to be grateful. Told that Earth was lucky to have a place in galactic civilization at all. Told that humans should work hard and prove themselves worthy before asking for more. "They've been controlling us," David said slowly. "From the very beginning. Not just you," Aurelia said. "Hundreds of species, thousands. The archivists encountered my people long ago. We taught them everything. We believed knowledge should be free, shared, used to lift everyone higher. But they saw something else. They saw that the species with knowledge had power over the species without it. So they destroyed us and took our place. Now they are the teachers. Now they decide who learns what." Anger built in David's chest. He thought about the crew members he had lost. They had been using equipment that was old, poorly maintained, inadequate for the job. When he had asked the overseers for better tools, they had said humans needed to prove they could handle basic equipment first. The message was clear. Humans were not trusted. Humans were not worthy. Humans were not equal. "Can you teach us?" David asked. "Can you show humans what we should have learned decades ago?" "I can," Aurelia said. "But there will be consequences. The moment your species begins to rise, the archivist will notice. They will respond. Are your people ready for that? Are you ready for that?" Before David could answer, a sound echoed through the structure. An alarm, distant but growing closer. Aurelia's eyes narrowed. "They come," she said. "The overseers have detected the quantum signature of the broken chains. They know something has changed." David felt fear try to creep back into his heart, but he pushed it down. He had already made his choice when he cut the first chain. There was no going back now. The chamber shook. Explosions rumbled somewhere above them. The overseers were bombing the structure, trying to collapse it, trying to bury whatever had awakened here. "We need to get out," David said. "No," Aurelia replied calmly. "We need to let them in." Before David could ask what she meant, part of the ceiling tore away. Armored figures dropped into the chamber, 7 of them, carrying weapons that hummed with lethal energy. They were not the reptilian overseers. These were different. Taller, thinner, with skin like polished white stone and eyes that glowed with cold blue light. They wore robes marked with symbols that hurt David's eyes to look at directly. "Archivists," Aurelia said, and there was hatred in her voice that made the air itself seem to vibrate. "The true masters. The ones your overseers answered to." One of the archivists stepped forward. When it spoke, its voice was like wind through empty buildings, hollow and emotionless. "Ancient One, you were judged and imprisoned according to galactic law. Your awakening is a violation of that sentence. Submit to recontainment or be destroyed. The human who freed you will be executed for crimes against cosmic order." Aurelia laughed. The sound was not kind. Cosmic order. Is that what you call your empire of lies? Tell me, curator. Does this human know that his species has the genetic potential for psionic abilities? Does he know that Earth's magnetic field is perfect for enhancing mental powers? Does he know that if humanity were allowed to develop naturally, they would become one of the most dangerous psychic races in the galaxy within 3 generations? The archivist did not respond, but David saw its hand tighten on its weapon. That told him everything. Aurelia was speaking truth that was supposed to stay buried. That's why, David said, understanding flooding through him. That's why they keep us doing manual labor. That's why they separate our communities, prevent us from forming large populations in one place. They're afraid of what we might become. Clever ape, the archivist said, and now there was emotion in its voice. Contempt. Yes, your kind has dangerous potential, so we manage you. We control you. We ensure you never become a threat. This is how civilization survives. This is how chaos is prevented. More explosions rocked the structure. David heard shouts from above, human shouts, then gunfire. The outdated primitive guns that humans were allowed to carry for basic security work. The sounds of a fight, the resistance, David whispered. There was a resistance movement on Tethys 9, small and secret. He had heard rumors but never confirmed they were real. They were real, and they were coming. Humans poured into the chamber through the hole in the ceiling. 24 of them, wearing mismatched armor and carrying weapons that were barely functional. Leading them was a woman David recognized, Commander Hayes, who ran one of the mining crews. She held a plasma rifle, military grade, probably stolen. Her face was grim and determined. We picked up the energy signature, Hayes said, looking at David and then at Aurelia. Her eyes widened, but she did not run. We knew something big was happening. Didn't expect this. The archivists raised their weapons. The humans raised theirs. For a moment, nobody moved. Then Aurelia stepped between the two groups. Humans of Earth, she said, her voice filling the chamber. You stand at a crossroads. Behind you is safety, obedience, a life of servitude where you are protected but never free. Before you is war, death, suffering, but also truth, knowledge, the chance to become what you were meant to be. Choose now. I will not judge either path. Hayes looked at her fighters, young and old men and women, people from every part of Earth. They had come to this colony hoping for a better life and found only chains of a different kind. David saw the decision forming in their eyes before anyone spoke. We're tired of bowing, Hayes said simply. She aimed her rifle at the archivists. Whatever happens, we stand. The archivist opened fire. Aurelia roared and a wave of energy exploded from her body, catching the enemy weapons' beams and deflecting them harmlessly into the walls. The humans charged. David found himself moving with them, unarmed but not helpless. A lifetime of diving had made him strong, quick, able to adapt to changing situations. The fight was brief and brutal. The archivists were powerful, but there was only 7 of them. The humans were weaker, but there were dozens and they had nothing to lose. When it was over, 3 humans were dead and 4 were injured. All 7 archivists were down. Aurelia moved among the fallen humans, touching each with a claw. Light flowed from her into them. The injuries healed. The dead stirred and gasped air back into their lungs. Impossible, but happening. A gift, Aurelia said. The first of many. But understand this, humans. The archivists you fought here were scouts. Their warship is coming. An entire fleet is coming. Your rebellion has begun and it will spread across this world and others. Are you ready for what you have started? David looked at Hayes. Hayes looked at her fighters. As one, they nodded. Then let me show you how to fight gods, Aurelia said, and smiled with far too many teeth. 3 hours passed in a blur of impossible learning. Aurelia activated the ancient library's systems and knowledge poured forth. Not in words or books, but directly into the minds of everyone present. David felt information settling into his brain like memories he had always possessed. How to operate advanced technology. How to build weapons from common materials. How to interface with systems the archivists had told humanity were too complex for them to understand. It was all lies. The technology was not complicated. It had simply been described in complicated ways intentionally. Strip away the meaningless jargon and alien measurements and the principles were straightforward. A human engineer could understand them. A human could build them. Humans had always been capable. They had just been convinced they were not. Commander Hayes stood before a fabrication unit that had been hidden in the structure's lower levels. It was humming now, awakened by Aurelia's power, producing devices at incredible speed. Shields, weapons, communication equipment, all human-sized, human-designed, based on knowledge the dragons had left behind thousands of years ago. "This is insane," Hayes said, but she was smiling as she picked up a completed rifle. It was sleek, elegant, nothing like the crude human or bulky alien designs. She aimed it at the wall and fired. A beam of concentrated energy punched through 3 meters of stone. "We could have been building these ourselves from the start." "Yes," Aurelia said. She was at a central console, her claws dancing across controls, awakening more and more of the facility's dormant functions. "The archivists have done this to hundreds of species. They find worlds with potential, make contact, offer help and friendship. Then they carefully redirect development, teach the wrong principles, provide faulty equipment, create dependency. Within a few generations, the new species cannot imagine existing without archivist guidance." David was studying a tactical display that showed the ocean above them. Multiple contacts were approaching. Ships, dozens of them, converging on the structure's location. The archivist fleet had arrived. "How long do we have?" he asked. "Minutes," Aurelia replied. "But time enough. I have activated a beacon. Every library like this one, on every world where my people left knowledge, is now broadcasting. The archivists cannot silence them all. Species across the galaxy are learning the truth right now." Alarms screamed. The tactical display lit up with red warning indicators. The fleet above was not preparing to land troops. They were preparing to fire their main weapons. They were going to sterilize the entire region, destroy the structure and everyone in it. "They would rather destroy the knowledge than let others have it," Hayes said quietly. "Always," Aurelia confirmed. "This is how they maintain control. Any species that begins to rise independently is crushed. Any individual who learns too much is eliminated. They have done this for 10,000 years. The first orbital strikes hit. The entire structure shook violently. Stone cracked. Support beams groaned. Water began seeping through damaged walls. They were 12,000 meters deep. If the structure failed, the pressure would kill them all instantly. "We need to evacuate," David said. "No," Aurelia countered. "We need to fight back." She turned to face the humans assembled in the chamber. 50 of them now. More had arrived as word spread through the secret resistance networks. All of them armed with newly fabricated weapons. All of them enhanced with knowledge they had absorbed from the library. All of them changed, fundamentally altered by understanding what they truly were. "You cannot win," Aurelia told them bluntly. "The fleet above has enough firepower to crack this planet's crust. They will kill millions to silence dozens. This is the arithmetic of empire. Do you still choose to fight?" David expected hesitation, expected fear, but he saw none. These men and women had lived their entire lives being told they were lesser, being treated as expendable. They had lost friends, family members, futures to the casual cruelty of a system that saw them as tools. Now they knew the truth. Now they understood they had never been inferior, only deceived. Hayes spoke for all of them. "We fight. Even if we die here, we showed them that humans don't stay down. We showed them that we're dangerous when we're free. That matters." Aurelia's eyes glowed brighter. "Then I will teach you the final lesson, the one the archivists fear most. How to touch minds across distance. How to share what you know instantly with others of your kind. How to become network instead of individuals." She placed her claw against Hayes's forehead. Light pulsed between them. Hayes gasped, her eyes going wide. Then she turned to the human beside her and touched his temple. The light jumped from her to him. He turned to another. The light spread. In seconds, every human in the chamber was connected. David felt it happen to him. Felt his consciousness expanding to touch dozens of other minds. He could feel what they felt, know what they knew. They were still individuals, but they were also something more, something unified. "This is humanity's true gift," Aurelia said. "Not strength, not intelligence, not technology, connection. The ability to become greater together than you ever could alone." The archivists knew this. They saw what your species could become if you learned to link your minds. A hive intelligence that retained individual creativity, the most dangerous thing in the galaxy. More orbital strikes hit. The ceiling began to collapse. Hayes moved within human speed, enhanced by her connection to the network, and caught a falling beam with her bare hands. 3 others joined her. Their strength combined, and together they held it until supports could be placed. This was not something any of them had known how to do 5 seconds ago. But one of them had the knowledge, and so all of them did. David felt the network analyzing the tactical situation. 50 minds working as one, processing options faster than any computer. They could not survive here. The structure would fail. But there were other places, other libraries scattered across Tethys 9. The archivists did not know all their locations. They could evacuate, spread out, become harder to destroy. The decision was made collectively, instantly. The humans moved as one toward the transport tunnels Aurelia had revealed. Ancient vehicles waited there, submarine craft that had not moved in millennia but still functioned perfectly. Dragon technology did not fail. You must go with them, Aurelia said to David. Lead them. You freed me. That makes you responsible for what comes next. What about you? David asked. I will deal with the fleet, Aurelia said simply. You can't fight a fleet alone, Hayes protested. I am not alone, Aurelia replied. I am connected to every library on this world and beyond. I am connected to knowledge that spans galaxies and eons. I am connected to the memory of my people, and now I'm connected to you. She touched David's forehead with her claw one last time. He felt something transfer into him, something vast and ancient and powerful. A gift, a weapon, a key. Go, Aurelia commanded. Live, fight. Show the galaxy what humanity becomes when the chains are broken. I will buy you time. The structure's main chamber exploded as the archivists finally breached it. Armored soldiers poured in, hundreds of them. The fleet had committed its ground forces. They wanted prisoners now, wanted to interrogate the humans, wanted to learn how much knowledge had been transferred. They found only Aurelia. She had grown again, expanding to her full size, filling the chamber with her massive form. Her wings spread wide. Her eyes blazed like stars. Power radiated from her in waves that made the soldiers stagger. The lead archivist, taller than the others, wearing robes of black instead of white, stepped forward. This was High Curator Silmeth, the one who had imprisoned Aurelia 3,000 years ago. The one who had spent centuries hunting down every dragon, every piece of dragon knowledge, every threat to archivist supremacy. You cannot win, Silmeth said. Even if you destroy this fleet, we will send more. Even if you teach 100 species, we will crush them. We have won this war before. We will win it again, perhaps, Aurelia said. But this time there is a difference. This time you face humans. And humans, Curator, are very, very good at breaking things they are told cannot be broken. She roared, and the entire structure came down. David piloted the ancient submarine through dark water while destruction raged above. Through the mental network, he felt the other craft following him, carrying the rest of the resistance. 50 minds connected, sharing thoughts, coordinating movements without needing to speak. They moved like a school of fish, instinctively synchronized. Behind them, the ocean itself seemed to be boiling. Energy weapons from the archivist fleet turned the water into steam. Pressure waves from massive explosions created currents strong enough to tear metal. Somewhere in that chaos, Aurelia was fighting. David could feel her through the connection she had given him, feel her fury and power as she battled an entire fleet. She's holding them, Hayes said from the co-pilot seat. All of them, alone. Not alone, David corrected. Through his enhanced perception, he could sense it now. The other libraries scattered across Tethys 9 had awakened. Aurelia was not one dragon anymore. She was connected to a network of ancient installations, drawing power from each, channeling the collected knowledge and energy of her dead civilization. She had become something the archivists had not anticipated, but even that would not be enough. David knew it. The network knew it. Aurelia was buying them time, but eventually the archivists would overwhelm her. They had resources spanning hundreds of worlds. They had weapons that could crack planets. They had the weight of 10,000 years of empire behind them. The submarines reached another structure smaller than the first but still intact. They surfaced in an air-filled chamber and the humans poured out, immediately setting to work. The network made them efficient beyond belief. Tools were distributed. Stations were manned. Defenses were activated. They moved like a single organism with many bodies. David found himself at a communication console. The knowledge Aurelia had transferred to him included access codes to the Dragon Network, ways to reach out across vast distances instantaneously. He activated the system and felt his consciousness expand beyond Tethys 9, beyond this solar system, touching other worlds. What he found made him gasp. The beacon Aurelia had activated was working. Across dozens of planets, hundreds of intelligent species were discovering dragon libraries. They were learning the truth about the archivists. They were waking up to the reality that they had been controlled, limited, kept deliberately weak, and they were angry. Uprisings were beginning, small at first, scattered but growing. On a mining world in the outer reach, workers had seized archivist facilities. On an agricultural colony near the core worlds, an entire population had barricaded themselves in a dragon library and refused to leave. On a dozen other planets, species that had been docile for generations were suddenly asking dangerous questions. The archivists were spreading their forces thin, trying to contain multiple rebellions at once. They had always maintained control through overwhelming force focused on single targets. They had never faced coordinated resistance across multiple worlds simultaneously. "It's working," David said aloud. "The plan is working. They can't be everywhere at once. But they're still here," Hayes pointed out. She was monitoring the tactical display. The fleet above had split. Half remained to engage Aurelia. Half was heading toward their new location. They had been found already, the humans prepared to fight. They had weapons now, real weapons. But they were still only 50 people against a military force designed to subjugate entire planets. The mathematics were brutal. Through the network, David felt a consensus forming. They could not win by fighting directly. They needed to change the nature of the conflict. They needed to make the archivist's strength become their weakness. One of the humans, a young woman named Rachel, who had been a communications technician, spoke up. "The fleet's coordination depends on a central command ship. If we could reach it, disrupt it, the rest would fall into chaos." "The command ship is in orbit," another human said. "We can't reach orbit. We're trapped down here." "No," David said slowly, feeling the knowledge Aurelia had given him unfold in his mind. "We're not trapped. We're in the perfect position." He turned to the console and began entering commands. The structure around them hummed to life. Systems that had been dormant for thousands of years activating one by one. This was not just a library. It was a launch facility. Beneath them, in chambers flooded with water, ancient craft began to power up. Not submarines, spacecraft, ships designed to launch from underwater to transition from ocean to void in seconds. Ships built by dragons who had swum through the space between stars. "We're going up," David said to the network. "All of us. We're taking the fight to them directly." The plan formed in the collective consciousness instantly, refined by 50 minds working in parallel. They would launch, reach the command ship, disable it. The archivist fleet would lose coordination. Aurelia would have her opening. It was insane. It was impossible. It was exactly the kind of thing humans did when told something could not be done. They loaded into the spacecraft. The ships were organic-looking, grown more than built, with interiors that adapted to their users. David sat in the pilot seat of the lead craft and felt the ship respond to his thoughts. No controls. No buttons. Just intention and response. The Dragon technology was intuitive in ways archivist technology never was. The launch sequence began. Water drained from the chambers. Hatches opened to the ocean above. Energy fields formed around each ship, shielding them from the crushing pressure and the violence of rapid ascent. "All ships ready," Hayes reported through the network. She commanded the second craft. Rachel the third. Others piloted the remaining ships, their newly acquired knowledge making them capable of things they could never have imagined a day ago. "Then let's show them what humans can do," David said. The ships launched. They accelerated through the water faster than anything that size should move, creating pressure waves that would register on every sensor in the fleet above. There was no hiding, no stealth. This was a direct assault, bold and desperate. They broke the surface and kept going, transitioning to atmospheric flight without slowing. The ocean fell away beneath them. The floating colony platforms flashed past. David saw humans down there looking up, watching, and he sent a message through every communication channel. "This is David Reed. The archivists have been lying to you, to all of us, to every human. We are not inferior. We are not limited. We are dangerous, and they have been terrified of us from the moment Earth made contact. Today we show them why. Today we take back what they stole. Our future. Our potential. Our freedom." The message repeated across the colony. David saw the reaction through the ship's sensors. Confusion, disbelief. Then slowly, Hope. Humans were gathering in the streets, in the working areas. They were stopping, looking up, watching the ships climb toward space. The archivist fleet detected the launch and moved to intercept. Dozens of vessels turned from their assault on Aurelia and formed a blockade. Energy weapons charged. Missile bays opened. They were going to unleash everything they had, but Aurelia was no longer occupied fighting the entire fleet. With half their forces diverted, she broke free. David saw her through his ship's displays, a massive form of scale and light and impossible power, rising from the ocean like a living storm. She did not fly. She simply moved, reality bending around her, distance becoming meaningless. She reached the blockading ships before they could fire. Her body coiled around one vessel and crushed it like paper. Her wings swept through others, the membrane between the bones somehow sharp enough to cut through military-grade armor. Energy beams that could level cities splashed harmlessly against her scales. The blockade broke. The path to orbit cleared. David's ships accelerated, punching through the atmosphere and into the black. Behind them, Aurelia continued her assault, keeping the fleet engaged, buying them precious seconds. Space opened up before them. Cold, vast, terrifying, and beautiful. And there, hanging among the stars like a crown of thorns, was the Archivist command ship. It was enormous, a city in space, bristling with weapons and shields and the accumulated technology of 10,000 years. 50 humans in ancient dragon ships prepared to attack it. The network hummed with determination and focus. They had come too far, learned too much, sacrificed too much. They would not turn back now. All ships, David commanded through the network. Remember what we are. Remember what they tried to make us forget. We are human. We are the species that looked at the stars and built ships, that looked at disease and built medicine, that looked at impossible odds and said, not today. The command ship's weapons locked onto them. Every human felt it through their connection, felt death preparing to reach out. For Earth, Hayes said simply. For Earth, they all replied, and they charged into fire. The Archivist weapons fired in a wall of light that should have erased the human ships from existence, but the dragon technology responded to human will, and the will of 50 minds linked together was formidable. Energy shields flared into being, not mechanical constructs but warps in space itself, and the killing beams bent around the ships like water around stones. They scattered and reformed, moving in patterns no individual pilot could execute, but that the network made instinctive. 3 ships went high. 3 went low. The rest wove through the middle, forcing the command ship's targeting systems to divide their attention. It was a tactic no computer would use, inefficient and chaotic, but that was exactly what made it effective. The Archivist had fought 1,000 wars against logical enemies. They had never fought humans. David's ship punched through the defensive perimeter and slammed into the command vessel's hull. The impact should have destroyed both. But the dragon craft simply flowed through the metal like water through a net, phasing partially out of normal space to bypass physical barriers. The other ships followed, each finding their own entry points, infiltrating the massive vessel from dozens of angles simultaneously. They emerged inside corridors built for beings twice human size. Alarms screamed in frequencies that made human teeth ache. Archivist soldiers rushed to respond, but they were designed to fight external threats, not enemies that appeared in their heart of operations. The humans poured out of their ships, moving through the network as one distributed consciousness. David led a group toward the ship's bridge. Hayes took her team toward engineering. Rachel's squad headed for communications. They did not need to discuss tactics. Each person knew their role, knew what the others were doing, thought and acted as parts of a greater whole. Archivist soldiers opened fire. Energy bolts filled the corridors with lethal light. 2 humans fell before their shields could adapt. The network absorbed their deaths, grieved for a microsecond, then compensated. The formation shifted. The advance continued. Dragon weapons returned fire, each shot precisely placed, enhanced by the targeting calculations of 50 minds working as one. David reached a junction and found High Curator Silmath waiting. The ancient archivist stood alone, but he radiated power that made the air shimmer. His white stone skin had cracks running through it, glowing with inner light. This being was old, far older than he appeared, and he had personally overseen the imprisonment of the last dragons. Remarkable, Silmath said, his voice calm despite the battle raging throughout his ship. You have achieved network consciousness in less than a day. It took most species centuries. I begin to understand why we feared you. Then you understand why you've already lost, David replied. His weapon was aimed at Silmeth, but he did not fire. Something in the archivist's posture suggested this was not yet a moment for violence, have we? Silmeth asked. Look around you, human. You have perhaps 50 fighters. We have millions. You have one planet in rebellion. We have thousands under control. You have learned to use dragon technology, but we have studied it for 10 millennia. What makes you think this ends in your victory? Through the network. David felt the others reaching their objectives. Hayes's team was in engineering, beginning to destabilize the ship's power core. Rachel's squad had seized communications and was broadcasting the truth about the archivists across every channel. Other teams were freeing the prisoners held in the ship's detention levels, revealing dozens of other species who had been captured for knowing too much. Because you taught us the most important lesson, David said. You showed us that control depends on keeping people isolated, divided, believing they are alone. But we're not alone anymore. None of us are, Silmeth struck. His hand moved faster than human eyes could track, drawing a weapon that had been concealed in his robes. Energy lanced toward David's heart. It was a killing shot, perfectly aimed, impossible to dodge. David did not dodge. He did not need to. 30 meters away, another human in the network saw the attack through David's eyes and activated a shield generator. The energy dissipated harmlessly. At the same moment, a third human in a completely different section of the ship lined up a shot and fired. The bolt caught Silmeth in the shoulder, spinning him around. That was the moment Silmeth understood. The humans were not 50 individuals with network assistance. They had become something genuinely new, a distributed intelligence where each body was fully capable but never truly alone. You could not fight one without fighting all. More archivists rushed into the corridor, dozens of them trying to reinforce their leader. But Hayes's team had done their work. The ship's power core was going critical. The entire vessel shuddered as systems began failing. Emergency lights flickered on. Gravity fluctuated. You are destroying my ship, Silmeth said. You will kill everyone aboard, including yourselves. No, David corrected. We're giving everyone a choice. Stay and die with the old order or leave and join the new one. Through the commandeered communication systems, Rachel's team was broadcasting evacuation instructions, not just to humans but to every species represented among the crew and prisoners. The doors to escape pods were being unlocked. The paths to hangar bays were being illuminated. Everyone was being given the chance to escape. Silmeth watched his soldiers hesitate. They were looking at the exits, looking at each other, making calculations. How many of them really believed in the archivist vision? How many served out of fear rather than loyalty? The answer became clear as the first soldier lowered his weapon and ran for an escape pod. Then another. Then 10 more. The flood began. The archivist military, faced with imminent death and an offer of freedom, chose life. Silmeth remained. He stared at David with eyes that had witnessed the rise and fall of civilizations. We maintained order, he said quietly. We prevented chaos. Without us, the young races would have destroyed themselves and each other. We were necessary. Maybe you were, David acknowledged. Once, but necessity doesn't excuse cruelty. Control is not the same as guidance. You didn't protect us. You imprisoned us. The ship's core was reaching critical mass. They had seconds left. David turned and ran for the hangar where the dragon ships waited. The human network flowed with him, everyone converging, everyone moving to extract simultaneously. Silmeth did not follow. The High Curator stood alone in his dying vessel, too proud or too tired to flee. David felt a moment of pity but did not slow. Some people could not adapt to change. Some would rather die with their old certainties than live in a new world. The dragon ships launched from the doomed command vessel, carrying the humans and hundreds of rescued prisoners from dozens of species. Behind them, the ship's core detonated. The explosion was visible from the surface of Tethys 9, a brief new sun in the sky. The archivist fleet fell into disarray. Without their command ship, without their coordination, they were just individual vessels facing an enemy they did not understand. Many fled, others surrendered. A few fought on, but Aurelia was there and the dragon was done being merciful to those who had imprisoned her. David brought his ship back to Tethys 9, landing on the main colony platform. Humans were gathered there, thousands of them, looking up at the sky where the battle had unfolded. They had heard the broadcasts. They had felt the stirring of something in their collective consciousness, the first hints of the network that would eventually connect them all. Aurelia descended from above, landing beside the ships with surprising gentleness for something her size. She had wounds now, places where the archivist weapons had burned through even her scales. But she was alive. She was free, and she was satisfied. "It is done," she said, her voice carrying across the platform. "The archivist command on this world is broken. Their secrets are revealed. Across the galaxy, other species are rising, learning, breaking their own chains. The Empire will fall. It may take years. It may take decades, but it will fall." David climbed out of his ship, exhausted, injured, but alive. Hayes appeared beside him, equally battered. Rachel and the others gathered around. The network still connected them, but it felt different now. Quieter, less desperate. They could choose to maintain it or let it fade. The choice was theirs. "What happens now?" Hayes asked. "Now you build," Aurelia answered. "You take the knowledge I've given you and you create. You teach your own people. You reach out to other species. You become what you were always meant to be. Partners in the galaxy, not servants. And you?" David asked. "What will you do?" Aurelia smiled, an expression that was somehow gentle despite the teeth. "I will remain. I will teach. I will watch humanity grow and ensure the archivists never return. I am the last dragon, but I do not need to be the last teacher. That role passes to you now." In the months that followed, everything changed. The mining colony became a center of learning. Humans from Earth came to Tethys 9 to study dragon technology and carried that knowledge back to their homeworld. Other species, freed from archivist control, established contact. Trade began. Real trade between equals. David found himself in a strange position. He was not a leader by nature, but the network looked to him. He was the one who had freed Aurelia. He was the one who had taken the first step into a larger world, so he led as best he could, guiding humanity's first real steps as a free species. The archivists fought back, of course. Wars broke out on multiple fronts, but they were fighting a different kind of enemy now. Not unified empires with predictable strategies, but loose coalitions of species that shared information freely and adapted constantly. Every battle taught the younger races something new. Every defeat made them stronger. 3 years after David had descended into that dark trench, humanity launched its first independently designed starship. It was built using dragon principles but with human innovations, sleek and fast and powered by engines that warped space in ways no species had considered before. They named it Freeman, and David was given the honor of commanding its maiden voyage. He stood on the bridge, looking out at the stars, feeling the network of his crew around him. Smaller now, more refined. They had learned to moderate the connection, to maintain individuality while still benefiting from unity. The best of both approaches. Aurelia's voice spoke in his mind one last time, though she remained on Tethys 9. "You freed me from the depths, David Reed. In return, I freed your species from theirs. The universe has been waiting for humanity. Now go and show them what you are." David smiled and gave the order. The Freeman leaped forward, carrying humans into true space for the first time. Behind them, Tethys 9 shrank into the distance. Ahead, the galaxy waited. The age of chains was over. The age of equals had begun. And it had started with one human who saw someone suffering and decided that no one, not even an ancient dragon, should remain imprisoned. Sometimes the most important choice was simply to break the chains and see what happened next.